Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Frosted? Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. And we're delighted you're here. We broadcast 2 hours a day from the United States of America. And Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. Thank you very much, Jason, for the excellence in broadcasting that you engineer. I'm Vincent Finelli. Guineith Isaacs is with us, live in Australia. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you today?
Frosted. Frosted. Yeah, well, you know, I lately it's so easy to stay frosted because of all the stupid people that I see everywhere I go. Let me give you an example. You know, I've been fighting with my electric bill. I've been trying to, my initial target was I wanted to get it down from $100 a month 15 years ago to $66. That was my target. And every time I did something to increase my efficiency here at the farm, to use less electricity, they manipulated the way they charged me so my bill would go up. And the more I worked to reduce it, the higher my bill went. Now, why do I say these people are dumb, generally dumb public? Why? Because the people that vote for the people who raise our rates are the dumb people. They are just as dumb as a box of rocks. So here's the latest thing that they've approved. They've approved a rate of about 10 cents per kilowatt hour. I use here, we at the farm, we use about 1,000 kilowatts a month, about 33 kilowatts a day, roughly. That's about $3.33 of electricity per day. That's if we did not have a system to generate our own electricity. Well, we have been able to generate enough electricity to pay that exact amount. So we can generate all the electricity we use right now, except the board of directors of Liquid Electric has imposed a $27 a month fee to have a meter. And class, I'm pretty sure in your neck of the woods, the generally dumb public that elects your board of directors for your electric utility company has done the same thing or similar to this. So in order to generate enough electricity to pay for the $27 meter fee, I would have to generate more electricity than we use in a month to pay back the $27. Now, why is that? Because the rate is structured such that we pay 10 cents a kilowatt hour. The electric utility company pays 5 cents a kilowatt from the companies that they buy electricity from. So they buy, it for 5 cents and sell it for 10. Except if you have a solar system and you want to sell it to them, then they only pay you 2 cents. So they pay me less than half of what they pay a corporation to do exactly the same thing, to generate exactly the same electricity with the same sine wave, with the same frequency, with the same voltage. They pay more for other people to generate it than they would pay anyone who has a solar array. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
Well, why is that? Because that's what the board of directors approved. So I get, if I put electricity on the grid, I get watt for watt. It's called net metering. So I put out 1,000 kilowatts, and I can withdraw from the system 1,000 kilowatts, no charge. But there still is that $27 a month meter charge.
Wow.
There's no way without more than doubling the size of our solar array that I could ever pay back the $27 a month in what they charge me. It's a rigged system. The entire board of directors needs to be fired. It's designed to rip you off every way they can. I just proved it to you. Guineith, any comments?
I'll bet you that it's not an old-fashioned meter either. I'll bet you it's a smart meter.
Yeah, we've got a smart meter.
I'll bet you it's not one with the little wheel that spins around and around.
No, I've got one of those.
To have with the red line.
Yeah, I've got one of those.
What? Well, you know how to do it. You should just disconnect your smart meter, reinstall your old meter, and send the smart meter back to them.
Well, I probably would be arrested for tampering with corporate property. Probably they would probably have me arrested. They're looking for.
Wow, that's amazing. It's a totally rigged system.
Absolutely, totally.
It really,
rigged.
Truly is. And it's coming to the point where if you know history, it's actually kind of comforting to study a bit of history, because you realize that this has all happened before, and this sort of thing tends to happen quite near to a point that is generally called the end of the various civilizations that have been on this earth before. Like I was mentioning the other week about the chimney tax that was during the English Civil War, and the window tax. Yeah, these things, they were at a time where they were experiencing a collapse of civilization. Okay? And yes, it was hard. Yes, it was difficult times. But what happened was a lot of the dead wood of that civilization was trimmed away, okay, during that time, and sometimes literally trimmed away. And you had a great deal of hardship, but at the end of it, the end of that era did arrive for them back in the day, back in the English Civil War. Cromwell went the way of all flesh, okay, Oliver Cromwell. And when he did, the English people made a decision. They decided that they were fed up with having their republic, and they weren't going to have the republic anymore, and they were going to have a king again. And so they remembered that Charles II, or Prince Charles, the heir to the English throne, was still alive. He was in France. And so they brought him back to England and basically had one of the, it may not have been the most economically prosperous, but it was one of the most fun times in all of English history. Because, the things were going to get a little bit better for them from then on. And actually they did. But it took a while for things to really, get started again. That was the beginning of a new era when they put Charles II on the throne. And we've been here before, is what I'm trying to say. When people start to do things like meter taxes, window taxes, chimney taxes, it means that they're running out of money. That's it in a nutshell. And if they're running out of money, it means that they're almost going broke. And if they're almost going broke, it means that at some time down the track, they're going to have an Enron moment. Do you know what an Enron moment is?
Enron?
Yes.
Yeah, Enron was the biggest financial collapse in the United States history.
Yes, they were an electric company, were they not?
They were, well, they were in the energy business. And I remember seeing a report on television when I used to actually think that there was some worth to television. I thought 60 Minutes, the television show of years ago, was worth considering watching. And they did a special about Enron and how awesome Enron was. And they actually supported how great Enron was. And then, very shortly after that, Enron collapsed, filed for bankruptcy, and they had no assets, none. And this was in the billions of dollars, this collapse, the Enron collapse. It was creative accounting, which is another name for lies, cheating,
fraud,
theft. That's what happened. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, it is. And it's really interesting that you say that, because at the time that Enron was on its last legs and everybody was praising it, I was at the University of Melbourne and I was studying environmental science, and we had our lecturers telling us to watch Enron and just watch the way that it collapsed, because it was on its last legs and it wasn't going to last too much longer, and that we shouldn't believe anything that we were reading in the press. And at the time, I will say who told me that. Tim Flannery told me that. And he's a internationally known environmental scientist. And he said, basically, listen, I know what you're hearing about how great Enron is, how wonderful everyone thinks Enron is. And this was only about 6 or 12 months before Enron's collapse. And Tim Flannery was saying, don't believe a word of it. They're on their last legs. They're going to go bankrupt. And, you know, I don't know, he must have had some inside information somewhere. But he said they're doing accounting fraud was his name for it. He said
that's absolutely right.
The way that they're operating things is completely fraudulent. The way that they're billing their customers, and he actually outlined it in the lecture of everything that they were doing. And of course that was not allowed to or supposed to go public at the time, and it didn't. But when I saw how it unfolded, it just made me sit back and say, well, Dr. Flannery, you're absolutely right.
Yep, and Remington is in the throes of that right now. We'll be right back. Guineith Isaacs is talking with us today. She's in the front of the classroom. And we're talking about a massive, massive scandal called the Enron scandal. E-N-R-O-N. And this scandal first became obvious to the public in October of 2001. It eventually led to the bankruptcy of the Enron Corporation, which was a company that was based in Houston, Texas. And there was an accounting company called Arthur Andersen. And they were one of the 5 largest audit and accounting companies in the world. And they were the auditors for Enron. And you know what? I've been talking about the accountants, how they are destroying the United States of America from within. I've been saying how I think, now I can't prove this, as simple as an oil filter. We see a lot of different vehicles here at the farm, and what we're seeing is that the newer the vehicle, the smaller the oil filter. And I believe that the accountants are telling management, hey, force the engineers to make smaller oil filters because we can save money. And when they do that, ultimately, the price that's paid for the saving of a few dollars on the oil filter and the oil that would go into the new vehicles on the assembly line, that price is paid by the customer, the owner, when that vehicle fails prematurely. You ought to see a Fram PH8 oil filter, from the 1960s, 1970s, even in the 80s. It holds about a quart of oil. It will screw on to a Jeep Wrangler a 4-cylinder Jeep Wrangler engine. It'll screw right on there. But if you look at the oil filter that the auto parts store would sell you for a Jeep Wrangler, it'd be about a third the size.
Wow.
Because the smaller oil filters use less oil. They hold less oil. But the oil is the primary transfer agent to remove heat from the engine, heat from the piston rings, heat from the cylinder walls, heat from all those moving parts like the rod bearings, the main bearings, the camshaft bearings, the camshaft surfaces. All of the areas get really hot from friction and from internal combustion. Oil is what removes that heat and transfers it to the engine block. Well, by reducing the amount of oil, you reduce the amount of transfer agent. It's dumb. It's just stupid. You know, race cars don't have smaller oil pans to hold less oil. They have bigger oil pans because they know what I just told you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, it is just ridiculous because that's not very much oil. That's just over a cup of oil.
Right.
You know, the oil filter holds. You know, that's not very much oil at all. And would I be right in saying, because I've got a picture of an oil filter in my mind's eye, it has kind of a fin shape, right? Would I be right in saying that there's some heat transfer function there as well as filtration of the oil, that that it helped to cool the oil? Because they do have kind of a fin shape.
Well, there's several different kinds. There is a cartridge filter, which would be like I'll tell you what I do. If I have some engine oil that I want to use for lubrication purposes, for example, like a chain on a baler, I'll take used engine oil and I will put it through a funnel, and I'll take like a Brawny brand paper towel. That's a brand in America. And it's a real thick, top-quality paper towel. And they're disposable. But because of the way it's made, it is a great filtering paper towel. I will fold it into a form of a triangle, put that in a clean funnel, and I will filter the oil so that I can save it and use it for oiling engine chains on balers and things like that. But yes, you're right. That's the filter media. Then you have the can of the filter, which will release heat. You're correct. We'll be right back. We've been talking about the big collapse and the end. And Guineith mentioned Enron. And class, from Wikipedia, here's some highlights. That in the year 2000, Enron stock was selling for about $91 a share. A little over 1 year later, the stock was selling for about $1, actually less than $1.
Wow.
The shareholders were frosted. Shareholders were frosted, and they filed a $40 billion lawsuit against the company. The Securities and Exchange Commission began an investigation, and ultimately Enron filed bankruptcy in 2001. Many of the Enron executives were indicted for a variety of charges. Some were later sentenced to prison, which is a good thing. Arthur Andersen, the accounting firm, was found guilty of illegally destroying documents relative and relevant to the Securities Exchange Commission investigation. And that voided its license to audit public companies, meaning Arthur Andersen. And it effectively closed the firm. Then the Supreme Court gets involved and overturns that. Interesting. But Arthur Andersen was done. Bottom line is, we have entrusted accounting firms with the task of auditing public companies, which people buy stock in. Now, stock is ownership. So if you buy common stock, you are an owner So if you bought common stock of Enron Corporation, you would be an owner. And then later to find out that the accounting company, Arthur Andersen, one of the biggest in the world, fraudulently misrepresented the facts. So you've been fleeced by Enron and the accounting company. It's an absolute outrage.
And they've been doing it for years.
Yes.
You know, when I was in university and Tim Flannery told all of us, you know, there might have been 200 or 300 people in the class, watch Enron. He said specifically, watch Enron. They're engaged in accounting fraud. Don't have anything to do with them. Don't buy their stocks. This is exactly what they're doing. And he outlined how it all went down, chapter and verse, and that was in 1997 or 1998. Perhaps 96, 97, 98. Probably more likely 97, 98, which was, you know, years before it all went down at Enron. But he said they're going to fail. They have to fail. And he wasn't any great prophet. He was just a world-class energy scientist. That's what he was. And, you know, he's since, he's been made a professor. He's had best-selling books since then. But back in the day, he was just a regular university lecturer, at Melbourne University. But that's, you know, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to work this out. When a company's involved in accounting fraud, they have to go down sooner or later. And it doesn't matter how much you prop it up. It's only going to fall the harder. It always happens. It always happens. And it's gotten to the point where the whole ship, the whole system, is so engaged in fraud that there's no way that it can keep going, that it has to fall. It's just, you know, and nobody can stop it. It's like a house of cards. It literally is. I know there's a TV series out there with that name, but the reason why that TV series has that name is because it's an ancient proverb. You know, I used to make houses of cards with playing cards when I was a little girl, and it was so hard to get it above a certain level, because the cards would just fall. And all it would take is for one little card at the bottom to slip out of its proper position, and the whole thing had come tumbling down. And, you know, all it would take is just one little bump or one little knock or a breath of wind or whatever. You know, that's the reason why that saying came about, because that's been a children's game probably since as long as there's been playing cards. You know, and all it takes is one little butterfly wing effect to trigger the whole thing, and it'll all come tumbling down. And it always happens. It's happened every time before. It'll happen every time again, you know, and that goes for the government corporation as well. You know, I mentioned earlier off air, when I called you earlier, I had Cliff High, who's also a USA Prepares instructor, would call it a temporal marker. The Holy Spirit told me that a certain event would happen, and that would be a signal for things to come. And, you know, that event actually happened this evening, and I detailed to you privately earlier, Vincent, what that event was. And, you know, I thought to myself, wow. And when I saw this thing just unfold before my very eyes on the farm, and it was a good thing. It was ultimately a good thing. But when I saw it, I remembered what the Spirit had been saying to me, and I said, oh, wow, this is absolutely amazing, because it's not something that I was expecting. But it happened, and now I know that things are going to unfold in a negative way for society pretty quickly from now on. And we've got an election here in the next week or two, federal elections. Everybody's jumping up and down. the parties that I'm seeing the most advertisements for are independent parties. Nobody seems to be interested in the mainstream left and right parties. But I want to reiterate that after the election, things have been designated to go south in these 6 to 12 months after the coming federal elections. And that has been, like I say, that's information that has come to me from sources within the, governing authorities here in Victoria, or that they think that they're our authorities. But, they're going to deliberately send things into a state of collapse here. And, and there's nothing that anyone can do about it except to prepare and to keep their own households and their own kin safe, prepared. Get out of the cities, get out of the towns, go to your, to your country estate, wherever that is, and sit it out. And, if you're not there already, then you'd better get there now, and you'd better set things up. And, it doesn't matter. Like I say, Tim Flannery saw this collapse coming in 97, 98. 96, 97, 98. He saw this collapse of Enron coming. It didn't happen until 2001, which was years after he was saying it. He was saying it's baked in the cake, it's going to happen, it's going to collapse, don't buy their stocks, don't have anything to do with them. They're engaged in accounting fraud and they're going to fail. And this is how it's going to happen. And he, drew it up on the blackboard or the whiteboard or whatever it is and outlined it at the time. And he was absolutely right. And he probably did have inside sources, and he probably felt very frustrated that he wasn't allowed to say anything publicly, so he just said it in his university lectures instead. But, it's, like I say, Blind Freddy is a saying that we have in Australia. Blind Freddy could see this coming. That means even if you're totally senseless, but you've only got a little bit of sense, you can see this coming. In a world where, everything is taxed and, you're not free. Another thing that's been happening to myself and to other people is we are getting doxxed on our, on our online commerce. Alex Jones has mentioned it, that this is something that's happening with him. I can tell you for sure that it's happening with me, okay? My YouTube channel, they're just taking zeros off of the view counts, and what that means, if they take 1 0 off your view count, that is your reported views are down by 90%, okay? Meaning that if you actually have 100 people viewing your video and YouTube only says 10, that means that there's 90 views that are going unreported. And YouTube's been doing that for years, and it's just blooming frustrating, And, the adpocalypse is now a historical fact. It just happened. Nobody can make any money off YouTube ads anymore. And a lot of the time they're not even bothering to put ads. They're just putting these survey things on YouTube. Like, which washing detergent did you see advertisements for in the last week on YouTube? What do you remember insurance companies being advertised? Who cares? I just press skip ad. And of course that, just reduces the ad avenue. But it's none of their business. I don't care. So if I get a YouTube survey, I just press skip. I don't know if you get YouTube surveys for the YouTube videos.
Yeah, I do. I do, and I skip them. And what I do is when I see the ads on YouTube come up, I look to the right of the screen and I count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Skip ad. I don't even pay attention to the ad. I don't even know what the ads are. I don't care. They're idiotic. They're silly. They're beyond dumb. And I've got several comments that I'd like to make about the things you've just said when we come back. Guineith's with us live in Australia. A couple comments, Guineith. I wrote down an equation. You mentioned the name Blind Freddy. So I wrote down this is an equation. Blind Freddy equals GDP. So when I refer to the generally dumb public, I believe I'm referring to the same thing as you when you say Blind Freddy. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be about right. It's a very Australian saying. I don't think they say it in America. But Blind Freddy, that would be who it is. Even Blind Freddy could see that. Yeah, Blind Freddy is the guy who lives down the road, and he's got his head in the sand and his ostrich rear in the air, and he, doesn't really pay attention, but even he could see that something is not right in the state of Kansas or anywhere else either.
Okay.
I think that's the saying you would have in the United States. Something ain't right in the state of Kansas.
Right. Okay, and I wanted to let our class know regarding USA Prepares, there's no phone number to call anymore. No phone number. There is no email address. None. None of the email addresses we used to use are available anymore. And there's no website. Why? Because we are under attack. So I took down the phones, I took down the email addresses, and I took down the website. You can't contact us any of those ways. And you mentioned, and it's okay. I got to tell you, it's really nice. It's really nice not getting those emails from so many time wasters. I don't have to worry about it anymore. I don't have to worry about the barrage of spam. I don't have to worry about those threats. Let me see if I can find one of these things. One of these threats that we receive. Oh, okay. Let me bring it up.
Yeah, they send those emails to me too.
Yeah. And this guy says, or this parasite says, hello, I know your password, and they type in a password. And it was the original password that we used with our email, and we changed it immediately. Immediately. I have infected you with malware, a remote administration tool, some time ago, and since then I've been observing your actions. The malware gave me full access and control over your system, meaning I can see everything on your system, turn on your camera and microphone, and you won't even notice it. Notice about it. You won't even notice about it. So this parasite pervert.
Can you get the grammar right?
Right. Yes, such things exist. You can Google it, according to this is what it says. Okay. I have access to all your contacts. I've collected everything private from you, your pictures, videos, everything. I made a video showing both of you. Okay. And the video you were watching on the screen. And it goes on to say some, pretty awful things. Okay. And then it says I can prevent the person from publishing this. Well, here's the interesting thing. When people come to our house, they say, hey, you got Wi-Fi? I go, no. I don't have Wi-Fi. I don't have Wi-Fi because I don't know what people may use my Wi-Fi for. I don't know. So they're not going to use Wi-Fi. Can I turn it on? Yeah, I can. But is it turned on? No, it's not. I don't turn on Wi-Fi so people can't use my Wi-Fi, in addition to the big reason, which is I don't want the electromagnetic radiation in my house. So I don't have Wi-Fi. So they're saying that they have this parasite this guy who is trying to blackmail me and my family is saying that he's got video. There's no such thing. How do I know that? Because none of the computers on the farm has a microphone, nor do they have a camera. And in the studio, guess what? There are no cameras. Not only that, I have hard on-off switches, and there are no soft switches. When I turn the power off on these devices, it's off. So all of this is phishing. I'd love to catch this guy, because I think drawing and quartering is in vogue for these types of crimes. But because of parasites like him, there's no way you can contact me anymore, class. That's it. Done. I'm serious. We'll be right back after top of the hour news and commercial now. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us, and we've been talking about the end. We've been talking about Enron. Mark in Illinois, welcome. You're on with Guineith Isaacs.
Hi, good morning, Guineith. Good morning, Vincent. Hey, I was in Missouri in 2016. I was, it may kind of sound strange, but God does lead me places, and sometimes I don't know why, but then later on I find out. And I was there in Kirksville, Missouri, living on Baltimore Street in this building, and there was this power station. It used to be an old Walmart store. There it became another type of farm implement store, and they were starting to overhaul this entire sub structure for that they had Enron did. And they brought in big crane, and they brought in this platform, this semi-trailer. It's probably like about 45 feet long, and it had a power plant on it. And it was close to the building, but the substation was already too close to the building. Should have never been. I don't know if the substation was there first or if the building, because I'm not from that area. So anyway, they brought this power plant in, and it was even closer to the building. And I just had a premonition from the Holy Spirit that I needed to call Enron. So I found out, that their headquarters were in St. Louis, even though their Enron is really out of Chicago, but it's called Enron, Missouri. And I called them up, and I said, and I didn't even know that my neighbor had a pacemaker, but I didn't know both my neighbors on the third floor had pacemakers. One lived right next to me, and the other one was kind of like an L shape of the hallway there. And so one door, and then make the L, make the turn, and then 2 doors down was a woman who was a retired nurse, and she was probably in her 70s. And she had a pacemaker, I found out later, but I called Enron up in Missouri and St. Louis, and I said, we have people in our building that have pacemakers, and I said, this power plant, the substation's giving off an EMF frequency already, and now you brought a power plant in here, and it's even closer to the building. And I said, if you don't get that out of here, I said, people are going to die. I just had this premonition, and there were people that were doing construction in the building that were there to revamping the entire building, and I actually told them about this. And about probably a week and a half later, I walked out my door, and my neighbor, who was probably first time that I really actually talked to him, I said to him, I said, do you feel anything really weird in your body? Because I could feel it in my body, and I knew it was affecting me. But and he said no, and I said, do you have a pacemaker? And he said yes. And then he told me, and then I asked him, I said, well, do you know that, an EMF frequency can, kill you with a pacemaker, and you know what's going on with and he said, well, I'm not worried about it. And he said, well, he said he thought he was shielded. He thought his new pacemaker had some type of shielding. And I said, I didn't want to argue with him or nothing. So anyway, he was walking down to the Dollar General store, and I asked him if I could give him a ride. And that was the last time I seen him, because a week later he died.
Was his name Freddy? Was his name Freddy?
What's that?
Was his name Freddy?
No, his name was not Freddy. I don't remember his name right now.
I thought his name was Blind Freddy. It's just one more example. One more example of the GDP, the
Blind
generally
Freddy, yeah.
dumb public. So here's a guy, you're telling him about electromagnetic frequencies, and he's not worried about it. He's not worried. I'm not worried about it. What an idiot. What an idiot. I'm sorry to say it that way. What an idiot. Let me say it a different way. What an idiot. You know, class, seriously, what Mark is talking about is absolutely positively true. Here's an experiment you can try. You can go and get a 4-foot or an 8-foot fluorescent light bulb, okay? The kind that you used to see in supermarkets, a shop light, you know, not LED, fluorescent. You can take that and you can walk under, and you might want to scout out the area, you know, in the daytime. But at night, you can take that, maybe do it when there's a full moon so you can see where you're going. Take that fluorescent light bulb and hold it parallel with your hand in the center of it. Okay, don't touch the ends. Hold it with your hand in the center of it, parallel to the power lines above you. So if you're willing to stand underneath the power lines for a few seconds, hold that fluorescent light bulb the same direction as the power lines are going, and guess what's going to happen? It's going to light up. Now, how is that possible that that fluorescent light bulb will light up without having any wires or electricity physically attached to it, you know, with wires, without a ballast? Because fluorescent lighting requires a ballast transformer. Okay? It's going to light up because of the electromagnetic radiation in the air under the power lines.
Activates the noble gases within the tube.
That's exactly right.
And makes them glow.
That's exactly right. So what I'm saying is, if you think that, there's nothing to it, you can prove it yourself. Go ahead.
Well,
It's
I wanted to believe in that building in the middle of January. I think it was like January 20th. I just packed up and I took off, but it killed 3 people. And I went to I went to the city of Kirksville. Enron just totally ignored it. And so I called Enron back up after, my neighbor had died, and they were recording everything, because they're part of their, what they do. And so anyway, I wasn't rude to the woman that answered because she was just a secretary. But I said, do you have the conversation on your computer? And I said, can you play it back so we can listen to it? And she did. And then now I want to tell you that my neighbor's dead because you didn't listen to what I told you. And then after that, there were 2 other people. The woman who was a nurse, it almost killed her. It didn't kill her at that time. I don't know if she's still alive now, but at that time she was all right. She survived what happened, and she told me about it and about seeing her doctor and everything. And it killed my neighbor, and it killed 2 other people down below because it was 3-story. And they just totally ignored it. They just made me out to be, paranoid or whatever. And the city of Kirksville just ignored it too. And I really felt bad when I left because all these people were just in this situation where they just couldn't get up and leave like I could.
That's a very valid point that you make, and let's put an exclamation point on that. So let's say you live in an apartment complex, and there are 16 units in that apartment complex. There are 16 electric meters that are somewhere that are associated with that apartment complex. There are probably 16 Wi-Fi routers. There are probably 16 or 32 cell phones. There are probably 16 computers connected via Wi-Fi, all in that apartment complex. 16 smart meters. And not all of these apartments are built out of concrete blocks. Many apartments are built to the cheapest standards possible. Heck, who cares? Who cares? They're just tenants. They can pay the extra utilities, the heat that's wasted through the walls, the ceilings, the windows. Who cares, right? That's the mentality of the builders and the landlords. They don't care. They don't care.
Yeah.
So you are absolutely right. The people who are in apartments, it's tough. It's really tough. And if they have that, apartment that's next to the transformer and the smart meters, they get it the most. As a matter of fact, I was talking with one of our instructors. She lives in Chicago. And she said she was moving, and we were talking about when she was going to come on the air with me. This is years ago. Hey, when are you coming on the air again next? And she said, well, I'm moving in after I'm done moving. So I talked to her, and she said, Vinny, there's this hum right next to my apartment. I can't stand the sound of it. I said, wow, it sounds like you have the apartment right next to the transformer for that entire building. And then she checked it out, and yeah, she did. So she moved. But her concern was not the electromagnetic radiation, but the 60-cycle hum. Along with the electromagnetic radiation is the 60-cycle hum. So you get both in many cases. But the one that's really, really dangerous is the electromagnetic frequencies that Mark and Guineith are talking about. You're absolutely right, Mark. Anything else you want to add to this?
Well, there's one thing about the 5G. What I really believe the 5G is, it's fiber optics that are mounted. Most of the time they're buried too, but they're on the telephone poles. And if you see, cables going through the air with fiber optics, each telephone pole is like an antenna. And I don't know how far they're spaced apart. But
that is actually how they're installing it. You
really don't have
YouTube
to put up
videos. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're putting them on top of every utility pole, and you will not be able to get away from it. And that's why I say, if you are in the cities now, if you're even in a little country town now, you need to move, and you need to get a block of land out in the country. And at the moment, it doesn't even matter if you move in there on a tent or in a mobile trailer, camping trailer, caravan trailer, what we would call them in Australia. You need to get out of the city now.
Right.
You need to
hold that thought. Hold that thought. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia, and I don't have a link anymore to Guineith Isaacs' web presence. Guineith, how would you like that information to get out? Because I took down our website, USA Prepares.
If people want to find me, they can search for me on Facebook. Just go to Facebook and in their little search bar type in Guineith Isaacs, and it should come up with my name. I'm pretty well the only one I know of on Facebook with that name. And you'll know it's me because there will be a masquerade mask as my little thumbnail. And if you go to my page, there'll be the photo with the highwayman at the top. And that's me. It's really interesting. I want to go into the reason why I've chosen this particular theme. It is mostly actually. It originated late last year because I had the ghosts of two of my past life selves show up here at this house. They left photos on my cell phone, on my son's cell phone, and I've published those on the internet. And I work as a psychic, and so sometimes I have to have dealings with ghosts. Okay, I grew up in a haunted house, and the ghost world is real. Okay, the world of spirits is real. It's just not debatable. Anyway, they showed up, and I asked them, I said, why are you here? And they said, Catherine Ferrers in particular answered, and she says, the redcoats are coming. And I said, all right, okay. And about 2 weeks after she said that, I saw a photo on the internet, and it was a protest that was being held in Melbourne. And the Victoria Police in Melbourne have a new department that they have initiated, and they are called the Public Order Response Team. And they don't wear regular blue team uniforms. You'll never guess what colour their uniforms are, Vincent.
Please tell us. The Public Order Response Team. The Public Order Response Team.
Victoria Police Public Order Response Team. Type it into Google and you will see their uniforms. They have red uniforms with white reflective stripes in an X shape across the front and across the back, or across the back, I forget. But they look like modern redcoats. And they are here because the Victoria Police knows that this is all going down, and it's going down really, really, really soon. And Lady Catherine lived a little bit before the redcoats were instituted. When she was alive, they were roundheads and not redcoats, because she was killed 1 month after Charles II was crowned. Okay, but she knows, she's been watching from the spirit world for hundreds of years, and she has seen the redcoats. They are bad, bad news. And I believe that it is not an accident that the Victoria Police have chosen this particular uniform. And I believe that if they are doing it, that other police departments all over the world are going to be doing it, and people need to be warned. And the George Wilson version of this is that the police are the Admiralty and they're not your friends. Okay? That's his take on it. But Catherine Ferrers does not call them police. She calls them the redcoats. And she says they're coming, and they are hostile, and we all need to be very, very much on our guard. They are the enemy.
Class, look it up. Public Order Response Team. Look at the images. We'll be right back. Guineith is with us. Guineith, I am looking at images right now of the Victoria Police Public Order Response Team. These guys and gals are equipped for very special warfare. They have black boots, black battle dress slacks on, or uniform or costume, black shirts, red vests. They have shields. They have the kind of shields in size that the Vikings used for hand-to-hand combat. They have these round shields. They're translucent.
They're called bucklers. They're carrying bucklers. They're round
They have
shields.
helmets that, yes, they have thicker helmet padding than you would have on a motorcycle. These are the kind of helmets that can take an impact from a baseball bat. These guys and gals, mostly guys, look
soldiers.
menacing.
They're no longer police.
They look menacing. And they have padding. We'll call it armor. They have armor on their legs, starting at their ankles and working their way up past their knees. They've got these flexible joints for padding above their knees. I can't really see in this particular picture if it goes all the way
I mean
to the
business, Vincent.
To their waist or not. Yes. Then for their arms, they've got black gloves, thick gloves. They've got paddings for their forearms. They have padding for their upper arms. They've got padding for their shoulders. They've got body armor on their chest and back and sides. These guys are only exposed from their neck to their chin. That's it. These guys are ready for us.
They wear dark sunglasses. You cannot see their eyes. And you know something? As far as I'm concerned, there is very, very little difference between the sunglasses that, the other team is wearing and a highwayman's mask. And I believe that they serve the same function to obscure their eyes, to form a disguise. I think that every police officer ought to be banned from wearing sunglasses that obscure their eyes. They hate it when we do it. They shouldn't be allowed to do it either.
And they have radios.
Sunglasses, you can get UV blocking sunglasses that do not obscure your eyes these days, that have a very, very light tint.
They have two-way radios. They have automatic weapons. They have these three-quarter, as I would refer to them, actually, I would refer to these full-face motorcycle helmets, except they don't have the part that covers the chin, so I'd say they're three-quarters, but they're more than three-quarters. They're like 80% coverage. And they have face shields built into the helmets. The only thing that's exposed is from their chin down their neck. That's all it's exposed. Now, in the back, the neck is covered with this flexible armor on the helmet. These guys look menacing. And I see 8 of them carrying this woman in a dress or a skirt. 8.
Yeah, they do. These. They carry off protesters. I've seen films of them. And they have this V formation where they march, shoulder to shoulder through the middle of a, protest. And they break it up and they make trouble. And these guys first appeared in the public eye that I saw. Okay, they may have been around before then, but I first saw them at a protest at St Kilda Road, which was basically Aussies being Aussies, saying we're fed up with all these Sudanese people coming in and destroying our country and robbing our houses and carjacking our cars and raping our women and stealing our kids' cell phones. But they're Aussies and they can't walk around in the middle of an Aussie city, And they said, we're fed up with it and we've had enough. And they were, they were barbecue and beer type Aussies, redneck Aussies, if that makes sense, Vincent. It's absolutely, it was mind-blowing for me because this was only about 2 weeks after I'd had this message from Lady Catherine to watch out, the redcoats are coming. That's why I'm here. She said that's why she was here, was because the redcoats were coming. And she was here to warn me, and she was here to help me get ready. And what help me get ready means, I don't quite know yet. Okay? But I think that a lot of it, I think that about 90% of it is just awareness and epigenetic triggering. Okay? To be able to know what to do when certain circumstances arise.
I'm looking at the Darth Vader costume If you take away the cape,
that's what they look like, with a red vest on.
If you take away the cape, that's pretty much what you've got.
And put a red vest on them.
Yes. Yes.
Yep. These guys mean business. And I saw them and I was like, oh my God, that's what she was talking about.
And the Australian Mounted Police in Victoria, they've got horses.
That's the other one.
Yeah.
They're just about as terrifying, and they work hand in fist with the public order response team. These guys are setting up as an army. That's what's happening here in Victoria. And I need to warn everybody that this is coming to a village near you. And this is why I'm saying, get out of the cities now. These people are setting up as an army.
These guys have the same costume, the same kinds of padding. They've got vests on. They've got helmets on with visors. Their horses have, I would say, from the hoof upward, they have padding so the horses don't get hurt. Now, nobody wants to hurt the horse. Nobody. But these guys are obviously expecting that their horses are going to get hurt, and they want to, I guess when they trample us with their horses, they don't want their horses to be injured. But the horses have helmets on. The horses have helmets on. I'm not kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to say this again, okay? A horse in the hands of a soldier is a weapon. They can be trained to rear on command. They can be trained to buck on command. They can be trained to paw on demand. They can be trained to trample on demand. They are a weapon. They can be trained to spin 180 degrees on command, no matter who's standing there. And they can be trained to swing 360 degrees on command, no matter who's standing there. And believe me, when you are standing next to a beast which weighs 500 kilograms and it suddenly swings into your body, unless you can have the sense to jump out of the way really quickly, you are going to get trampled. Okay? And if it's a tight crowd and that horse is in the middle of the tight crowd and its rider commands it to do a 180 or a 360 spin, and, there's a crowd pressing around it, everybody who is pressing against that horse is going to get trampled. A horse is a weapon under such circumstances. And it's been known for hundreds or thousands of years. Horses have been used as a weapon, and this is what they're doing. This is very, very serious. These people are lining up for war. And anyone with any sense in town, anywhere in Victoria, get out now. It's going to get bad really, really soon. It's going to get bad within the next 6 to 12 months. They are getting ready. They are lining up with their horses, with their uniforms, with their dark glasses. Okay? And it's, I'm just so glad that I am not in the eye of it.
I'm looking at some of these costumes that these guys are wearing. And there's an image, and I can't give you the link because I don't have a website that's up and running. I've taken it down. But I see guys with handguns. If you send me
a link, I'll post it on my Facebook.
Well, all you have to do, class, is type in Public Order Response Team, and click on images. And you will see these, and these could be your neighbors. These could be your friends. I hope not, but they could be. They show a guy, a couple of these helmeted, uniformed, body-armored guys grinding with their elbow this person they're arresting's face into the pavement. They're using this guy's face as lubricant.
These are peaceful protesters, by the way. These have mostly been, they've hardly been attacking the left-wing crowd at all. They've been attacking, the Aussie barbecue redneck bogans.
And these guys, the ones that carry just pistols, I'm not talking about the automatic rifle type guys, the guys with just the handguns, between 4 and 5 18-round magazines extra on their vest. Extra ones. They're ready for war. Guineith isn't kidding, class. In Australia, the villagers have been disarmed for the most part, but the police have been increasing their arsenal. They have extendable batons, riot shields, body armor, capsaicin spray, tasers, semi-automatic pistols, and they still think that's not enough. They have a new generation of gun. It's a 40-millimeter launcher that fires a round. It's a hard squash ball type round that hits with the power of a serious punch at roughly 150, 160 feet. Police are being trained live rounds with
too.
Yes.
Every Australian cop carries live rounds.
Right. This is in addition to
45 caliber, I believe it is.
The police are being trained with handheld weapons, a Stinger grenade that rolls along the ground and explodes and releases 9 rubber projectiles, waist high to about 15 or 16 feet. There's a sound, a flash detonation device that emits a noise, light, smoke, a seriously big capsaicin bomb. That is, that's like pepper. Extreme.
Capsicum.
Yes, pepper. Awful. If you're in that area where they deploy this. This is what they have. They have guns that shoot that kind of pepper. And it is so dangerous that they only use it in prisons because they're afraid what it would do if it were released on the public. This is serious stuff that we're talking about. And we haven't talked about the sound weapons yet. And these guys, when they show up with these armored vehicles. They have sprays that are sprayed. They have foam sprays. Who knows what's in these things? And they're all being paid for.
And by the way, if they show up to your land, okay, they will show up 6 and 8 and 10 at a time in multiple vehicles, okay? And they are very, very intimidating. And I know that because I've actually faced them down on my own land. The Victoria Police, they came up my driveway and their idea was that they were going to try and force me off my land. Okay? And I stood 1 inch from this cop's face and shouted at him, "Get off my land!" At that sort of volume. I don't want to, it was probably actually louder than that. But, you know, this is what we are dealing with here. They are coming up in cars to people's land, 3 and 4 cop cars, you know, 6 and 8 and more people, police, coming up and trying to force people off their land. This is what we're facing. It's happened to me. And it turned out that God was with me, the Holy Spirit was with me, and I won. And that was over a year ago now. And I'm still here. I'm still on my land. You know, what they're doing is totally fraudulent. It's totally evil. It really, really is. They have gone beyond criminal. They are now a hostile military force. They've fallen out.
Guineith, I wanted to respond to something that you mentioned about YouTube and the views and how they're lopping off zeros. We only receive about 200 to 300 views, maybe a little bit more sometimes, for USA Prepares on the Ron Gibson channel. And what are they doing to make sure that you don't pay attention to that? Well, Ron Gibson, with my permission and GCN's permission, has stripped out the commercials, puts it on YouTube. And what does YouTube do? They add nine, let me say it a different way, 9 commercials. And people say to us,
up to 24
commercials
in that hour and 10 minutes.
They're trying to.
I've seen up to 24. They're doubling up.
They're trying to destroy USA Prepares every way they can. Every way they can. And so, what's our response? Well, website's down, emails down, phone lines down, YouTube views are down. They're doing everything. Gwyneth, thanks so much for being with us.
God bless you all.